So before I get started actually writing any code, the first thing I like to do is just break down the layout in terms of a grid. And so, this is the final site. This is my vision. But before I ever write any of this, right, I usually start with something like this. And I'm using Google Draw here, but this is actually something more often than not, I would actually do this on a piece of paper, just faster and easier. So um, at the top, I want to have the name of my site. I'd like to have some kind of image carousel. I'm going to have a container for my image or for my mission statement. Um, right, all websites seem to have 3 columns. That's the trend nowadays. We'll put a little icon in here with a blurb of text under each one, and then in the bottom we'll do copyright and links to policies and stuff like that. So if I look at the overall site, right, I've got kind of a header section right here. I've got my main area, which is going to be the content, and I've got my footer area. And so the first thing I want to do is take this, and see if I can get this side by side, and go over to the code and kind of, let's make the main header and footer areas first. So, right, so I'll start with the main or the header. And the header is an HTML sectioning tag that we're going to use. All right, and this will be a useful hook for styling and for making the page readable by machines. So we'll have the main. This is going to be the content. All right, and I'm going to have a footer. So now we've got places for content. The next thing I want to do is look at how the Odin framework works, and we're going to put boxes. Okay, so we're going to divide it up into columns based on this picture right here. So when we go to Odin, I'm going to click grid. I'll click grid this time. And right, Odin is based on 12 columns. Okay, and there are CSS classes that we can apply. And all right, so if we think of this whole area spanning 12 columns of content, we can make different columns. And what I do is I specify how many columns of the 12 that they're going to span. Right, so here, if I make a column that spans 12, then what's going to happen is it stretches all the way across, and you can see columns that span 6 go half and half, right? And in every case here, what I've done is I make the sum of these numbers, right? It always adds up to 12. Why 12? Basically because 12 is a nice factorable number, right? You can divide it in half, and thirds, and fourths, and sixths. So it's really factorable, so it gives you a lot of flexibility as to the layouts. Also, keep in mind, right, they don't need to necessarily be even columns. As long as they add up to 12, right, you're good to go. And so when you're on the framework website, right, what we're going to do is, we can play around with the responsiveness of this as well. So, right, so we've got different screen sizes. So we got, let's say we got helper classes, and it says responsive classes can easily be identified as they are generally suffixed with XS for extra small, and SM and MD large and extra large. And so what's going to happen with this is, here, right, if we have an SM6, this column's going to span 6 columns on a small screen or larger, so anything bigger than 480 pixels. But as soon as we get below that, it's just going to stretch, right, all the way across. So what I want to do is I'm going to look at this, and this column, or this row right here, this row, I want it to span across all 12 columns on every single size screen. And so I'm going to get in here. Let me copy that, right? It's based on rows. So I'm going to take a row, and a column and paste it into my header. And let me keep I like to indent every single kind of tag level. And here's my column 1. Okay, the content that's going to go inside is going to be, this will be my site name. And actually, I'm going to change that to XS because I want it to span 12 columns on every single screen size. They do. And so if we look at our preview of our site now, let's click in here. Okay, and we got a little content on the page. And that's all that's going to be in the header. Okay, so we'll go down to the next row, and we're going to have another 12 columns spanning another column that spans 12 right here for the carousel, and we'll do one for the mission. So I can just copy and paste this. We'll go down to main because it's the content for the site. Paste that twice, and I will clean up my tabbing a little bit. Okay, put spaces between the rows. So this is going to be the carousel. And this right here is going to be the mission. Okay. Now I have my my columns right here. These three columns along the bottom with little icons and blurbs. So we'll go back to the Odin drawing, and I'm looking for columns that span 4. And so we'll take. There's one right here. We can just copy this and take it, and so now we got. Trying to keep my paste it in, and I want my site to stack a little bit sooner. So I think I want my site to start stacking. Okay, and this is something we can get through experimentation too. But um, I've already done this, and I found out that if I wait till the screen gets too small, things start to get bunched up in the 3 columns. So I would like them to stack a little bit sooner than at the small width. I want these to start stacking as soon as we are right. So I want them to be span 4 columns on medium and up. Right, so there's medium and up. And last, we'll go to the footer, and the footer is just going to be another column span of 12. And so we'll paste that in there. And this is going to be like my copyright, etc. That's what's going to go down in there. Even up my tabs. So now let's preview this. So here's my page, and I'll refresh it, and you can see, we kind of got, something going on. One more thing, it's sometimes it's kind of hard to tell if I've done this correctly. So if we go to the Odin documentation at the very bottom, right, there is another section called grid lines, and what we can do is apply a show grid lines class, right? And the classes are always in red to the body, and what it's going to do is show us. It's going to put just a thin border on every one of our columns so that we can see, right, if it works as we expect. So I'm going to copy that, and I will go to my body, and we'll do class equals show lines. And so let's go back to the page. Oh, got an extra quote there. Save it again. And there we go. So, okay. So this is pretty good. All right. We got the layout we want. And if I shrink it in, you can see, right, it's 3 columns, 3 columns, 3 columns. It starts to get a little tight, and then the columns stack. So this, if I start putting actual content in here, it should look pretty good on a phone. There's one more thing I don't like, right? If I go full width on my screen, um, this is going to be like watching a tennis match if I try to read this, because I've got to go 2,000 pixels almost in each direction to read content going across. And what I would like to do is just squeeze it in a little bit so that the content remains centered on my page. And so for that, I'm going to go look at the containers section, right? And um, this site or this framework gives you classes for fluid containers. And so a fluid container, what it's going to do is um, they have a max width specified. So they will expand up to whatever width is specified here, and then it'll stop expanding, and then it'll stay centered. So on my Odin page, or on my Buzz Tech page, right, I'm going to make use of the large container. Okay, I don't have that much to say, so I'm going to pick one that's not too terribly wide. And you can see how right here we just have the container, and you can see where it begins and it ends. All right, and so I'm going to grab container large, and we'll just go out at the top of my content. I'm going to take that closing div, go all the way down after the footer, and I'm going to take every bit of content inside, right, and just tab it over one space. And because I think it's easier to, with the indenting helps me see that every division, every div is nested properly. Let me fix that. All right, and then I'm using the tabbing. So the tabbing is going to make our code a lot easier to read. And so let's go back and refresh it. Okay, now I've constrained. So I've constrained the width, and we can shrink it in, and you can see that, right, once the browser window gets down to the container width, then the container is going to start shrinking, and then eventually, right, the columns stack, and we expand it back out again, and the container grows and grows and grows till it gets to a certain max width, and then it just keeps itself, right, then it just keeps itself centered. So now we, really, really quickly, just by using a framework of rows and columns and containers, we were able to knock out the layout. And so in the next video, let's go ahead and add some content.